All right, welcome everybody. Today I'm talking with Brian Shapiro. Brian is the brand ambassador for Oliva Cigars. I've known Brian for I think just over 1 year when I started working with Oliva Cigars since the beginning of 2021. Since then, we've been in contact quite a lot about the Oliva business. Worldwide and in Asia especially. So I thought it was a good idea to talk to Brian about his personal background, what's happening within the Oliva company, and what the outlook is for the next 12, 24 months. So I'd like to start with the background of you, Brian. Where do you come from? How long have you been in the cigar industry? Where do you live? Just give us some background about where you come from, so people can get to know you.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Hans. Yeah, it's I kind of sit in a very unique seat in the cigar world. Where I'm speaking to you from right now is my main office in South Norwalk, Connecticut. And if I was able to actually turn my screen around, you would see my office, and then you would also see way down there a retail space. And if you could see through these walls, you'd see a warehouse where we do our distribution for wholesale. We distribute cigars to all kinds of different places: cigar stores, liquor stores, gas stations, pretty much any of the markets or outlets for cigars. That's my family business, Casual Cigar Enterprises. Before we get to the Oliva part, just the backstory is that actually 1922, so it's 100 years that my family has been in the cigar business. My grandfather and his brother in New York City back in the 1920s, 1922, as I said, started a retail cigar business, but in those days it wasn't like we know today, special beautiful retail shops with walk-in humidors and things like that. It was a little bit less sexy back in those days.
Yeah.
So we had our cigars, and it was cigarettes and pipe tobacco, and then the front of the store had a window that opened up to 7th Avenue in New York City, and we would sell fountain drinks, candies, and so forth. And all of the garment district workers that from that area in New York City would stop by on their lunch hour or on their way in the morning to make their tobacco purchases. So it really evolved over years into where it was a more, let's say, more premium cigar shop that wouldn't come until like the 1960s into the 70s. And as things changed in the 70s, when the premium cigar business was having a pretty difficult time, we had other businesses in that same spot. And we actually, for a period of about 1980 to 1996, we really weren't in the cigar business. We had our other companies. So it was a little bit, 100 years with a little break in between, I would say, of about 18 years. And then in the cigar boom of the 90s, which those of you watching that may remember this, when Cigar Aficionado was born, and the entire landscape of the cigar world completely changed from something that guys would sit there with their cigars in their mouth like this and just smoke anywhere you wanted, any place at all. It went to movie stars and famous politicians being on the cover of Cigar Aficionado magazine, and it created something that people of my dad's generation and the Lou Rothmans of JR and Arthur Zaretsky's of Famous, our families were all within just blocks of each other, streets in New York City. Nobody knew what to make of this because nobody had ever seen anything like this, where cigars became in and popular and sexy to smoke, and women were smoking and really different, and that was the rebirth of us in the cigar business. In 1996, we opened up a little shop in Connecticut, Westport to be exact, which was a beautiful little town that didn't have a really beautiful shop. And so we opened up just really more for old time's sake, just for nostalgic. Yeah, okay, we wanted to make money and do the right thing, but it still was getting back to our roots. So it was kind of fun and nostalgic in that way. So we opened up this little shop, and things just took off from there. And then we moved to our current location. Simultaneously, we had 2 locations for a couple of years, and now we moved here, which is a much bigger space. And as things progressed and there was internet, and mail order changed from just calling in your order to doing everything online, and then gas stations and liquor stores and small shops opening everywhere. So that was our rebirth into the cigar world. This takes us to about 2004. And I was doing a little bit of business, excuse me, while I turn this off. We used to, my dad and I would go down to Miami a couple times a year, 2-3 times a year, to visit our friends and our suppliers in the business. We would just go down and stop in. And I was doing a little bit of business with Oliva at the time. So this is, I said, 2004. Oliva had been in the business for about 7 years. So they really got into the cigar business after the crazy boom. So they really came in at a difficult time when things were starting to really just relax a bit. And but I was doing a little business, and there was actually a small dispute over an invoice. I don't know, it might have been $100. I can't even tell you. But the woman who's in charge of accounting, she's still there today, and we still work together. Let's just say we had a little bit of a difference. And I said, yeah, you know what, Dad, let's stop in and we'll visit this Oliva company. I don't know who they are or whatever. So we stopped in, and lo and behold, Jose Oliva was there that day. And we ended up spending a couple hours together. We hit it off. More of a friendship, than business at that moment. And over the coming weeks and months, I suppose, Jose knew that my family had been in the business a long time. I knew that he was really super bright and eager to grow. And we just got into conversations about how we could work together. I can't remember all these years ago exactly how it evolved into, okay, well, why don't you come on board also with Oliva, in addition to running your company, as the head of sales. And that's what I did. I came on as the first head of sales of Oliva. At the time, we were dealing with brokers. So one of the first things was to release the brokers from our relationship and to hire people to work directly and for Oliva, which led me to hiring guys like Dave Wagner, who to this day is still down there in Miami. He was a customer, really one of these cigar crazy guys who would come in and buy, if it was Opus or if it was this or that, whatever was the craziest and hardest to get, he wanted it. So he was a great customer. And there was actually a couple other guys that were customers that I ended up hiring. So that was the beginning of how I got involved with Oliva. It wasn't long after that I had an interview with Corey Bappert, who's currently our CEO in the USA. And I interviewed him right out there, and he hired him as a salesman, and the rest is history. He's now our CEO. But then as things evolved and Oliva America USA grew, it became a little bit much to, let's say, manage. Now we had 10 and then 15 sales guys. And at that time, I was traveling to Europe frequently because of family, to Holland. And it was just by luck in the late 90s, before this happened, that I met Ilya Van Horsen, Sasha's brother. He had a shop in The Hague. So I would go there and disappear, let the kids, because I had nieces and nephews, and my kids were all little, running around in The Hague. And like, all right, I got to get out of here, go disappear for a couple hours. And so I would go to the cigar shop and met Ilya. And it was a couple of years after that that I met Sasha Van Horsen, who, as we know, or many of you know, that he is our importer in the Netherlands, not only a dear friend now for nearly 20 years or more than 20 years. And I was standing on a bridge in Delft. I don't know if you ever heard this story, Hans. And I was standing on a bridge in Delft. My niece was having a big birthday party, and my ex-brother-in-law was making the party. And I was standing outside. It was a beautiful day. And I get a call from Sasha, and he's like, hey, we'd like to bring your cigars into the Netherlands. I was like, okay, that sounds right. That sounds good. And that was the birth of Oliva in the international markets, standing on a little cute little bridge in Delft. And And then it really all developed from there. You know, at that time, as most people, if we were speaking mostly to people in the international markets, nobody knew Oliva in 2006 or 7 or whatever. And in fact, they didn't know most brands from this side of the planet. You know, maybe a few like a Fuentes and maybe Padron or something like that they had heard of, but obviously dominated by Cuban cigars. So that began a, let's say, a story of 17, as I call them, painful years. Not quite 17 painful, because we started to grow at some point in the last let's call it 5 or 6 years. But let's just say fighting to establish a Nicaraguan brand in particular. And as you know, yeah, there was Cuban cigars, and then after that it was Dominican and probably Honduran, and then Nicaragua was somewhere, you know, you couldn't see where it was. If it was Nicaraguan, it was like, you know, the stepchild at that time. And, you know, I would remember going early on to Dortmund, probably 2007, going to Intertobac. And people, you know, would say to us, hey, what is your brand? Oliva? Oh, how's that going for you? And it's like, oh, God, you know, and because it was around 2007 that we started to make some noise in America in a bigger way. You know, people knew us, Florida Oliva, as a bundle company. We made good cigars at a good price, had a few brands that were, let's say, related to each other, but Jose, you know, took his expert, let's say, his know-how in marketing and created brands that now looked like one another and could be related. So it was something that was starting to happen here. And in 2007, we got the Serie V torpedo. In fact, I think we got like a, I don't know, I'm going to try to remember, 94 or 95 rating, whatever it was. For us, that was crazy, you know. And then people started to, oh, Serie V, and so that started where in America we started to make some noise. Not yet internationally. A few people, some people, like Sasha, you know, caught on a little bit earlier, but there was no demand. There was no need. You know, Cubans dominated. There was no real rush to market. And then a couple of years later, 2009, if I'm not mistaken, Jose came up with the idea of nubs. Now, I thought he was out of his mind, you know, in the beginning. I was like, I remember, and I was sitting in a different place in my office. My desk was, and I can picture myself sitting at my desk over there and going, all right, Jose's crazy. He wants to come up with an entire line, 4 different wrappers, 5 different sizes or whatever it is per wrapper of these tiny little fat cigars. Now, other companies had done that before, but one shape, you know, one size. All right, 4x60. Small, you know, small Robusto or short fat Robusto, whatever. And I said, okay, well, maybe that'll work in America because they like everything bigger and fatter, you know. I said, but international, man, they smoke Monte Cristo #4s, you know, very elegant Lonsdales, you know, Hardigas #1s, you know, that kind of thing. And as we entered the US market with this brand, because we did a fantastic marketing launch here in America, so people started to hear about it. We're already getting inquiries, you know, questions, people asking us about nubs. I said, oh, well, that's interesting. Well, you know, now here we are in 2022, and we have, you know, 3 factories, and one just makes nubs. Some companies could just live off of the production of our nubs. So, you know, you don't know everything, but it was an innovative thing, and it was a really good idea in hindsight. And so as things developed, the international markets grew. And then the major step that we took as a brand, besides in the back of our, let's just say in the back end of our business, hiring some really, really amazing people that were not cigar people, they were just smart people to help develop the business from the back end and make it more professional in that regard. But Sasha van Horsen, who I've mentioned already, we agreed, and he actually was the one who asked us because we were looking to get, you know, a base on the European continent somehow, you know, some place where we could call home that would make it easier for us to ship goods, have them there. So when orders came in, they can go out more quickly and more efficiently instead of waiting for cigars to ship into who knows how many countries. one order by order to the Europe, to Europe, which takes much longer and is much more costly. So Sasha became our home base. He became our, I'm using an American term, but he became our headquarters. So we had cargoes that were shipped to Sasha. The orders were processed. We installed a computer system there so that we would literally take orders from our clients, then send them through the system. Sasha would actually have pick tickets coming out of his warehouse. He would pick and pack the orders and then do all the paperwork and documents and ship them for us. And that really gave us, let's say, an advantage that most people didn't have. I was fortunate to have the relationship. You just don't do those things with people you don't know. But because I had the relationship, it was much easier to do. And that really started to set us apart. In the, let's say, New World Cigars. And things started, we're moving and growing. And for a non-Cuban brand, we were doing pretty well and growing, but still, we had a long way to go. When I say painful, I mean, it was painful. I mean, you put your heart and soul into everything and you're doing it and you're like, it's like moving like a little bit at a time and, moving the needle 1 inch at a time. There were a lot of good feelings about how we were growing, but still it was, and me being an American and on top of that, a New Yorker, patience doesn't really work for me very well. And I learned it. I knew it was going to be something I needed to have, but still. And then fast forwarding a bit, going to, I'm going to say 2013, I was working on a project and a short filler project, a machine made project that we were playing around with and we did for a short period of time. And Sasha introduced me to a manufacturer for short fillers, which was Fred Vandermarliere, the now owner of Oliva. Just coincidental. He introduced me. We had no conversations whatsoever about the company being sold or bought or whatever. It was just, I said to Jose, I met this guy, Fred. I had a feeling we can do something together. There's a synergy. I kind of feel it. He just seems very much like us. And so Jose came over with me to Belgium. We met just to talk about things, just to see whatever it is that we can do together. We didn't even know what that was, quite frankly. We just thought we should meet. And then Fred came to Miami. We had a meeting there. And we did our little project for a while, and that we kept working together for a few years. But then, I don't know if this is karma, you call it, perhaps. But in 2014, December of 2014, I was visiting Holland and Belgium. I stopped by to visit Fred in the office, again, just to stop by and say hi and go over a few things. And it was that day that I was heading back to Paris to fly home. So I had to get a train from Lille, France, Lille, France. But I was there in the office and they announced the #1 cigar of the year. And we had gotten it with the Melanio Figurado while I was in, right after I had left Fred's office. So I don't know, there was karma there. Maybe Fred was the good luck charm, perhaps. And so that launched us into another atmosphere. Now, being on this side of the fence of the cigar world, not just the salesperson for Oliva, but being the purchaser of cigars through my family company here in America, I'm very in tune to those things that happen in the USA. And I know that in prior years, it is very difficult getting first of all, it's almost like a sick joke getting the #1 cigar of the year in December, because you get this huge demand immediately for the product that gets the #1. And everybody's going on vacation because it's Christmas. So it's like we get these orders. As I was on that train from Lille to Paris, my phone is like exploding in my hand with orders, not only orders that I'm tracking that are coming in for Oliva, and I'm getting phone calls, "Why, you're not going to believe this, thousands of boxes." I'm getting orders from my company. What do you do with this? I mean, I don't even know what you do with it. We're like, all right, we're going to, by the end of the week, we had like something 30,000, 40,000 boxes. What is this? And the difference was that Jose he planned it right. Didn't try to rush product to market that was going to be inferior or not the quality that we were used to. That's not going to work. We've seen that backfire in the past. But as we were able to get back from obviously the holidays and things get going, we were able to start getting product to market incrementally, little bits at a time, so that people were able to get some. And then as more was ready, we got more. And so we played it in a way that didn't alienate everybody and go, these guys can't get us cigars, because we did, but over periods of time. And we kept the quality where number one cigar needed to be. And that really, you know, we're looking 8 years later now, and we still live off of how that moment in time was handled. Because like I said, it could go either way. And everybody who's watching, and certainly people who are in the business, know the quality of Oliva. So that was very important, because that could have been the death of you. So that number one cigar could be life or death, depending on how you handle it. And then it was a couple of years after that, well, probably a year later, that the conversations began with Fred Vandermarliere showing interest in purchasing the Oliva company. And then in July of 2016, that was official. The company was officially purchased by Fred, and he bought out the Oliva family. Now, as anybody who knows Fred, Fred is not the type of guy to just walk in and like a general and start going, okay, you do this and you do that and change this and change that. No, Fred is quite the opposite. Fred sits back and says, okay, what is everything that is going right? And don't you ever touch that. And on top of that, how can we make things better? If what needs to be improved, but don't touch all the good stuff, which we knew we had. And one of the things that he did, to his credit, was he kept Jose Oliva. He knew Jose and his vision about the brand was very important to have. So Jose was CEO of the company, working with Fred, even though he had sold the company. His brother, Gilbert, who is a tobacco genius, as anybody in the industry will know, even to this day, even though he's not part of the company, he's still part of the larger circle of Oliva. And we worked together in purchasing tobacco and making decisions about tobacco. And for people in the United States, more probably than international, they know that most cases, in fact, it's almost 100% of the time, that when some company comes in to buy an existing company, especially if it's some unnamed companies that are like disasters when they purchase brands, and you know who I'm talking about, Hans. Those are brands just find their way and they die. You know, they don't find their way is what I should say. And in this case, we, all these years later, can look back and say, this is really the first time, it's certainly the first time in all my years of doing this, that there has been a successful, I'm not going to say ending, because we're not ending, we're still just beginning, but successful continuation of a story when one family or one company acquires another, which was very unique. Most people are not used to that. So we can proudly say that we did it right, and we hopefully to continue to do it right over the years. And as the guy who was doing it all for many, many years, it's a blessing for me, you know, it was hard in the beginning to let go of my baby, you know. I was doing this and international was my baby, and it's like, I got to send it off to school, and I'm worried my little baby's going to get beat up in class. But it was the people in both sides of the ocean really came together. And it was a little hard for me in the beginning, but just to have the luxury, and I call it a luxury, of having such good people in Belgium, our export managers, our market managers, like yourself now, you're in and overseeing the Asian side of things. I really consider this to be the best team in the cigar business without exception. A lot of other good companies out there, don't get me wrong, but we have the resources to make it where we are looking at this today, where whatever you need, whatever part of the world you're in, you got somebody to talk to, and then they can come back to me, and then I can coordinate with the factory and whatever needs to be done. So it's a pretty unique situation. I feel very fortunate to be able to be in the seat, to see this, to watch this continue to happen. It's a long time. So
yeah. No, that's right.
That's the story right there.
That's the story. Yeah, no,
I mean, wait for the movie. The movie's coming out.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story, and there are a few bits and pieces in there which were also which were new to me. So, and if you look at Oliva, I think over the last few years, many cigar companies have done quite well. There's a bit of cigar boom to. It's probably an understatement. Internationally, you mentioned it's going quite well. Where do you see most of the growth coming from?
Well, our struggle throughout, let's call it the first 15 years or so of not just ours, and I mean anybody from this side of the ocean and the non-Cuban brands. The struggle, of course, was the fact that the Cuban brands had the monopoly, if you will, on everything outside of America. Because of political things and embargoes and things like that, all the other brands had the monopoly in America. Can't really think of any product in the world that had this unique dynamic, where an entire manufacturing and selling, business was created just to serve one market, which was America. So all the brands that, let's call the Cuban exiles, if you will, that moved to Nicaragua, Dominican, Honduras, served only America. And being the single largest cigar market, you could live with that. Everybody else had no access to those because there was no need for it. So it's not the consumer's fault that they didn't have access to brands from our side of the world. But the fact is that there was no need for it. The Cuban brands, Cuba was the story of cigars. If you talk even to this day, cigars, you think Cuba. There's a big history there. You can't just forget that it exists.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest obstacle that we had was that there was no demand for our product. The Cuban manufacturers were taking care of it. And now we're seeing a very unique moment in time for many reasons. Well, a few. One is that I think those I'm speaking to understand that the Cuban manufacturing side of the business has suffered. We know about the quality has been suffering over the years. We know pricing has gone up tremendously. And then you pile on top of that this COVID boom, which nobody could have ever imagined. I mean, nobody could have imagined COVID, never mind a cigar boom. That's the last thing from anybody's mind. People are dying all over the world, and horrible as it is. I think it's ironic that the cigar business, something that gets picked on, legislation, taxation, or whatever, that the cigar business is one of the few things that just exploded in this time. Very simply, I mean, I think everybody would agree, it has to do with people not going to work. They're working from home, whether they're doing it 5 days a week, 3 days a week. It is quite conceivable that the worldwide demand in cigars doubled.
Yeah.
Because if you say most cigar smokers, most are average casual smokers. They'll smoke on a Saturday or Sunday, or in America, at the golf courses or whatever. Now you're sitting around and you're having 2, 3 a week, 4 a week. We don't know. What are you doing? Where do you live? Is it warm? Is it cold? I mean, that dictates.
Yeah.
So we have seen this demand that has put an enormous amount of pressure on the already difficult production of Cuban cigars. And so importers and retailers need to make money. I say this time and time again because we get caught up in cigars as a very luxurious, beautiful thing. We relax and have a scotch or whatever, which is fine. It's all good. But in the end, the business side of it is still the business side. And so the retailers are going, I have no cigars. Give me any, I need cigars. And so we have seen in America, it's exploded. I mean, that most people following this know. But international, it became something I never thought I'd see, or at least not for many, many years, which is especially during my post-COVID visits to markets, Mexico, Italy, Spain, Belgium, Netherlands, is to see empty shelves where Cuban cigars had once existed. Just like the cigar of the year, the 2014, same thing. What happens when the demand goes up and you're not ready for it? As we know, cigars are something that you can not just turn a switch and make more. So all of a sudden, you have the big companies in America who are trying to find their way onto the shelves overseas, are saying, okay, now I have to make a choice. The demand is such that I either have to disappoint my American clients for the sake of my international clients, or I take care of my American clients who have been paying the bills for the last 30 years and go, okay, I'm sorry, I'd love to have more cigars for you guys abroad, but we just don't have it.
Yeah.
The fortunate thing for Oliva is that Fred, to his credit, didn't just buy a company and just say, okay, let's just make some money and whatever happens, happens. He's building a legacy. And he had, from the get-go, from 2016 onward, has been investing in the infrastructure, not only factories and production centers and box factories, but also fields, agriculture, and tobacco. So while he was investing for the future, he didn't realize that none of us realized the future was right here. COVID created the future.
Yep.
And because of our ability to produce and to get things to market, we have been able to really see some substantial growth that probably would have taken another 2 or 3 years by natural progression. So I think that most of us in this business from this side are going to continue to see growth. And I see Oliva as a company that is going to continue to grow exponentially. So it's been a unpleasant, but pleasant surprise, because nobody wants to make money while people are sick and dying. So that's the hard part. You know.
Yeah. No, that's true. Which product areas do you see most potential, most growth? Is that the Serie V you talked about? Is that the NUBs, or is that another category where you see most potential for the near future?
Well, I think at this point, with the conditions the way they are, I think it's pretty much everything we make. Now, the demand, I mean, you know, we have always sold cigars, and most people will tell you that in some cases, we're probably even underpriced a little bit. That doesn't mean we're raising prices, but certainly with the quality of, let's say, a Melanio being, let's say, the top level, and V just right below it, you know, the demand is always very high for those products. Those are your flagship brands. Serie V and Melanio, those are the flagships. What we're seeing and what we're happy to see, obviously, are brands like Serie G and Serie O, and certainly NUBs has been NUBs have been right behind V and Melanio in growth the whole time. But the ability, and Connecticut Reserve is starting to see more traction as well. So V and Melanio, yes, I think the demand for those will always be at the highest. But as the spots open up for the middle range of cigars, not as strong, you know, more mild or whatever, I think the O's, the G's, and Connecticut's will continue to see growth. Okay.
If you look at the near future, we are now almost halfway through 2022. You expect to launch anything special, anything new in the rest of the year?
Well, we, as most people know, and I joke about this all the time because the question I would get year after year after year is, when are Oliva going to come up with something new? And as I said in Belgium, as you remember, when we were sitting there during our importers meeting, I'm like, no, I got old and I'm selling it all day long, which is a good thing, because what we have done is grow very deep roots, which is what you want. We do, as you know, release annually our Melanio limited edition. We've been doing that now for quite a number of years. We released last year our 135th edition or anniversary Serie V, which we decided last year that it would be an annual release. So again, limited editions, you know, annually. We have been discussing, and we will certainly at some point come up with something new. We are toying around with it. We have been discussing it, but we've got sidetracked by the fact that the demand on the factory for everything we have right now put that on hold. So, you know, but what it is, we haven't decided, but we are discussing it. We are working on it. As things just calm down a little bit, then I could see in the next year or so us releasing something brand new. In the meantime, line extensions, as you know, we increased our lines of Melanio Maduro, even the Melanio sizes G's. We have sizes that we added for the international market. So we'll continue, but we're gonna, most importantly, is get products that we currently have on the portfolio to market, and to us, that's our priority at the moment.
Yeah. Well, demand is very high at the moment. I think everybody will confirm that. Demand's high in the United States, demand's in the high internationally. How do you see this in the next, I'll say, 2-3 years? Will this continue, do you think?
Yeah, what we're seeing even this year over last year, because last year, let's call it, was the sweet spot of the cigar boom. This year, it's still very strong. I think we're seeing a little bit of leveling off, but not much. I think a new level of demand will, we have said it. So we went we went up here, and it's not going to do this. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see, a leveling off, but slight growth continuing, because I think we've changed the work habits forever. I don't think, I can't speak about all the European markets or Asian markets and so forth, but certainly in America, nobody's going back full-time ever to their offices. And even if it's a couple of days a week working from home or whatever. So I think we're going to continue to see the demand because of that as that changes. I think our demand, we'll see some of that also in the international markets, but I think that the growth internationally will continue at a higher level because we had so much further to gain. In America, we control a pretty decent size of the market, does Oliva. In the international markets, much less. So there is a much further, road to go. And because of all the things we've already discussed, I think we're going to continue to see significant growth. Things like duty-free, where we're growing. I mean, could never have imagined. I was talking to Jose Oliva and giving him the update last week, and he's like, I couldn't have ever imagined the numbers that you're telling me on the demand side. So that's coming from Jose. So
yeah, if you look at my area, Asia Pacific, I think the future looks very bright for cigars. So
and China is always the wild card. China.
Yeah, of course.
We don't know.
We don't know. No, of course we don't know what's going to happen there. But if you look all over Asia, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, all these areas are growing. Because they're still relatively small compared to the US and some European markets. But we are.
Yes.
We're catching up, so that's a good thing.
No, the world is a very big place. Okay.
Yeah.
In cigars, we tend to, look at things a little bit smaller, because we are in the big picture of commodities, a very small commodity relative to everything else. But I think what we see is as these markets start and are now aware of products from not Cuba, outside of Cuba, then just pure numbers will dictate growth.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So,
All right. Last question, Brian. What is your favorite cigar?
My favorite cigar ever is the Serie V.
Serie V. Okay.
Serie V is
any
my
particular model shape?
It's interesting. I tend to smoke more double Robustos than the other shapes, as a lot of people smoke Robusto sizes. But I've recently, because of other times I've smoked them in the past, the Churchill, because the Double Toro is a delicious cigar, but you got to be prepared to smoke a 60 ring. For me, not the most comfortable shape, but I love the flavor, but I can't be comfortable with it. But the Churchill is really a cool shape. 48 ring, it's got that length. It's a very, very good cigar. So I've been going back and forth. More time with Churchill, less time with Double Robusto.
Okay. All right. Anything you would, and that is definitely my last question, anything you would like to add, which I've forgotten to ask you, which you would like to get off your chest and tell people in the cigar world?
Well, look, it's for various reasons. It took some time, but I'm happy at this moment that for whatever the reason, that the demand for Oliva and other brands as well from our part of the world, but Oliva in particular, is there. I know that most of our importers and retailers knew the quality, knew that, that Oliva was a fine product, but I'm very happy that the consumers are going to benefit from what's going on, because they'll get a really great product at a very, very fair price, which is how we built our business. And so to me, in the end, it's all about the consumer. How do we get our cigars in their mouths so they can enjoy it? And hopefully this is, we're going to see more and more of that. And we as a company, as you know, are here to help in any way we can. That's kind of what I do. So.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you very much, Brian. Thank you for your time, and thank you for explaining the story behind yourself, behind Oliva. I think it's very interesting to hear, and also for the people in my area, they would love to hear this. So thanks again, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, well, as the global brand ambassador, I'm sure that there will be, once the world becomes a little bit more normal, we're getting there, then you'll see some of your people will see me there with you. That would be my pleasure.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Hans. All the best to
Thanks.
everybody. Stay healthy.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.